And we're back. And today we are with Marlo Higgins. Marlo knows success. As the corridor's only chief inspirational officer, Marlo specializes in motivational and strategy-based business performance coaching. Over the past few decades, Marlo has been in the people business of building multi-million dollar sales teams and helping individuals break free from self-doubt and allowing them to perform with peace and ease. I love that. She is also the author of The Making of a Maverick, Building Champions in Business and Life, and host of the 22 Motivational Minutes podcast, which has been praised by entrepreneurs and corporate executives alike. And we are excited that you are here today, and we'll get to sing some of your praises on our little 22 minutes together today.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I always love giving a little bit of context and helping people see how many different avenues there are. You know, I grew up thinking I was going to be a school teacher and like following the path, and like no one told me that I could be a maverick or build sales teams or, you know,
Right.
do all these outside of the box things. So
Yes.
I love sharing those, and I would love to know a little bit more of what brought you to entrepreneurship specifically.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting story. I like to call myself a triple crown entrepreneur. And really what that means is my journey to entrepreneurial leadership really began by helping 237 people create the freedom of building a profitable and sustainable independent business. So I, started with my foot in the water in 2005. That was the very first time I had that opportunity. And then in 2008, I guided a company to the brink of closure by taking sales up 220% in the first 180 days. Now, the reason I share specific stats is because numbers don't lie, right? And a lot of times people don't know the numbers. And so that's why I like to keep that, in real time. And it was then that I realized that there was a need for a guide on the entrepreneurial track to help people sustain and launch into their own businesses. I turned down a very high level 6-figure salary to start my own brand. That was 10 years ago. And I just work with freedom seekers because those are the people that just make my heart sing. And I love working in that space and with those people. And I've titled them as Mavericks. And a Maverick, by definition, it's an unbridled independent thinker, and they like to think outside the box and they like to challenge themselves. And so that's really kind of where the brand is at and what I do.
Raise your hand if you feel like a maverick. I'm totally resonating with you. Yeah. And I think what's so amazing in what you bring and like your energy is, yes, these like concrete numbers of like how many people you help and dollars in the door, but it's all for freedom, right? And freedom seekers and having those choices and making your own path does have a price, right? So I'm curious, and this is just like very relevant for this audience, like as a coach and as a motivator, how do you help people identify the cost of their dreams or how much they need to afford freedom? Is that ever a conversation you enter?
It's a fascinating way to approach it. And I think there's multiple ways that we can look at that. I guess I listen to the clients that I work with, and I really kind of let them guide the reason why they're going to where they want to go. So when I wrote the book, The Making of a Maverick, everything starts with clarity, right? That's the first chapter, because we have to get really, really clear, why we want what we want. And there's so much, out there about our why. But it comes down to, when you get into it, for example, I can say I want to be a coach this year, or I can say I want to transform 250 business owners and change their businesses. So it's really kind of how specific we really need to be in order to reach those goals. And those 250 businesses transformed is over $3 million in revenue. So there's multiple ways to look at it, but it really comes down to listening to the person and really what's making them tick rather than making them follow my suit and how I would approach it.
I love that, because when I think about and like looking at your bio, like performing with ease and joy and having peace in your life just looks so different for all of us. And something I've been caught up in, and I see clients get caught up in, is like, I have to chase this number, and they hit the number, and then for what? Right? They've just created this like corporate box for themselves. So that question was inspired by you mentioning, leaving a cushy or a attractive 6-figure job, JOB, and moving into more of this like freedom, mission driven space for yourself.
Yeah.
but no matter where you are, like dollars matter, numbers do matter, right? So
right, because otherwise we're professional volunteers, right? So if we
Yes.
don't talk revenue, then we're just out there, serving, but doing it as a volunteer versus a business owner. And that's a different way to think about things. And so many people, I think, get into entrepreneurialism and they become professional volunteers. They don't have a clear ask. They don't really know what they're striving for. They don't really know what types of goals they need to be setting. And then even the numbers are matched or aligned to that goal.
Or worse than a volunteer, they have a really expensive hobby. Like they're paying for all the like ClickFunnels and fancy things and not bringing anything in.
Yeah.
So talk to us, how do we put these pieces together to make sure that this is sustainable? We can get our mission out there, but we're also, making money, doing what we love.
The number one thing I help passionate entrepreneurs achieve their 1-year goal, and we do it in 90 days to build sustainability and profitability. The reason I share that is because, the variable there that I describe is time. And helping people understand, if we got into a partnership and let's say, we had 4 years to work together, I can guarantee the way that you're going to enter into that partnership or reach those goals is saying, I've got 4 years to get there and that's what I'm going to do. But if I said you have 90 days to get there, what needs to get done, it pulls it down to like granular laser level clarity of actions that you need to be taking in order for you to reach it. And so when you hear me describe that, I think that's, somewhat, I don't know, kind of speaks for itself. And so how do you get entrepreneurs into that space is just really aligning and saying, time is of essence, time is currency, and let's look at it differently. Let's measure those actions to see what you need to do in order for you to reach it.
Yes, this is so true. Just like getting ready. If I don't have to be somewhere for 2 hours, it's going to take me 2 hours to get out the door. Yeah. If I'm running late, like no mascara, it's fine. I can get out the door. Right.
Right.
So this is true on like the macro and the micro level. And something you're saying, we had a guest last week, Chris Jarvis. He talks about being the giraffe and getting elevated perspectives to wealth with like looking above the weeds. And he talked a lot about setting big goals, saying, I'm going to make $1 million this year instead of in 50 years, right? Because that forces you to get ready and get out the door more quickly, right?
Yeah, it does.
Sort of in alignment with your philosophy of setting big goals so that you get there faster.
It is. Plus, the time is such a variable and we can just waste our time. And what I find a lot of people, 80% of what entrepreneurs do is think about it, right? I'm thinking about, I'm setting up my week, and instead of thinking, let's be doing, and that's where, where it shows up. So if you're producing 80% of the time, you're going to get an 80% return. And so it just comes down to saying, there's some really clear framework. I built the Maverick ROI high performance system because I have witnessed what it really takes to start from concept and an idea to reaching a multi-million-dollar level. And I've done it multiple times. That's the thing that I love to do. It's just kind of one of those innate talents. And for me, on the Strength Finder spectrum, futuristic is my number one. So being able to take an idea or a concept and really seeing a clear path and how we're going to get there, no barriers, no obstacles. And so there's a few assets there.
Amazing. And I would say one of that, the 80%, like where does your attention and focus and energy needs to go, especially in the first couple of years of business, is major sales. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything you have to have a really solid pipeline. You have to have great lead generators. You have good communication systems in place. You need to have a team to be able to support that success. And yeah, it doesn't just happen overnight and it's not the snap of a finger, but it is a very vetted out, clear plan that will get you there.
Yeah. And so focusing on sales related activities, like you said, it's lead generation, it's communication, and it's actual sales conversations. Right. And one of the conversations I have most with clients is responding to the fear, I don't want to be salesy.
Yeah. Okay. So in that tone, I said, we speak of Maverick mantras. That's how I like to coach and train. And so I always say that if you educate properly, the sale automatically happens. And when I say it like that, I'm not saying you're selling anything, but if you educate, if you show up and you communicate in such a way, it will naturally draw people to what it is that you're doing. And it ignites this different level of energy around it. And you're not selling anything, but you're just sharing what you do. When you are that good at being able to just educate what it is, who you serve, how and why, everything just kind of aligns, and people are automatically going to raise their hand and go, you know what, tell me a little bit more about that, because that sounds really interesting. And you haven't sold anything, right? But here's another thing too. I think one of the key ingredients that's missing a lot of the time, people just don't ask. They don't ask for the sale.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a level of confidence. You can't just get out there and just go through the motions, because that's what a volunteer would do. But you have to have a clear bottom line ask and say, you know what, this is what I'm offering. When would you like to get started? It can be that simple. And yet so many people don't ask for the sale.
Yes, I love this. And this is, I wanted to be a school teacher in education, because I now see sales as helping people shift beliefs. So if you don't want to be salesy, then don't be salesy. That's what I always say. Like, be educational, be compassionate, be curious. Yeah. And if you're making asks and you're putting out there what you have, then at some point, like, the numbers don't lie. Like you said, like, flip the coin, you'll get some yeses, you'll get some nos. Right. And I'm curious how you navigate, like, making a lot of asks. I feel like you said you have a lot of action energy. So in making a lot of asks, we put ourselves out there. And I'm curious, how do you've done this longer than I have. How do you overcome no's? It's like there's rejection, and some will, some won't. So what? Like, oh, that's cool. But I often hear and also feel like, I wish I could not get so emotionally beat up by a no.
Okay, so yeah, and that's a great question. And I think that's just being human, right? So let me share a few things. One of the key things too, to give people the answer, right? Because a lot of people say, how do I communicate? What should I be sharing? And here's the golden rule. Just follow it. Do business unto others as you want business done unto you. So when I say that, when you go into a sales meeting, approach the conversation as though you want to be approached. And when you do that, you're going to get the best level of authenticity, because you're doing business in a way that really resonates to who you are. Now, what happens, we're talking about synergy in that space too. You're coming together with a level of connectivity and synergy that's literally combustible. And so immediately you two are heavily aligned and should be working together, because in essence, you're speaking the same language. And so a lot of times you got to just release the tension and just do business. That if the phone were to ring this afternoon and it is, you on the other side, what are you saying that would really get you to say yes? And there's your answer every single time. So that, I just wanted to add that nugget from what you had mentioned previously. But I've got two things about the rejection and overcoming that. Two clear things. One of them is an actual strategy that I created with our first sales organization that I built, and it's called the face value formula. Now, I'm not going to be able to get into that formula today, but if anybody's interested, you can email me directly. I'm sure, Hannah, you'll be putting this in the show notes. Reach out and I will go through that face value formula with you. What that face value formula does is every time you get a no, it actually gives you the exact dollar amount that you are paid for that no. So let's just say, by example, your no was worth $86. Okay. Go for 10 of those today and make $860.
Yeah.
All I'm doing there is saying, you know what? Your reaction to rejection is a thank you. It's gratitude, because you can say, you know what? Thank you for saying yes, or you know what? Thank you for saying no. Either way, you are framed with a mindset that you're getting paid a return regardless. And you've got to churn through the numbers. Success is a numbers game. You have to ask a lot of people to get through it. And, so that's a few tips and pointers. The other one is success boarding, and I can, go into that a little bit. Let me just give you just a little minor taste of what I'm talking about there. When I was working in 2007, building, this rebranding of the second sales team that was, really not doing well, there was just a lot of, fear and angst and negativity, and things just weren't happening. And so what I would do is strategically take the time and say, okay, we're going to set the timer for 2 minutes. You can have a 2-minute pity party. You can bring it to me big and bold. You can use like really naughty language on me. I mean, I can handle it. Let's take it. But once that timer goes off and once that 2 minutes is done, your pity party is over. And now let's talk about the silver lining. What actually has gone right? What's feeling good? And when you can start to strengthen your positive, optimistic muscle and you start to take your energy in that direction, things aren't negative anymore. And you can you're not that like snarky, staticky, negative individual.
Oh, yeah.
You become a magnet and people just go, okay, how is she doing what she's doing? Because I want some of that.
Oh my gosh. I wish I had heard this like 4 years ago, because back when I was just getting started and like really beat up by no's, my now husband we would literally throw a pity party. I'm like, I got to work through this. We would get wine and hummus. And by the end of, happy hour, I'd be like, okay, it's going to be fine. We have more calls tomorrow. Like, I can work through it.
Yes.
And now I'm closer, not quite 2 minutes, but I'm getting closer to the like, all right, onward, on to the next. There's lessons to learn.
Well, yeah,
so
because you can wallow. I mean, we could all wallow forever if we allow ourselves. But, it's not like we're sweeping under the carpet, and it's not like we're not being human and feeling the feels that go with it. We're honoring it, but we're doing it strategically. And I think more than anything, successful people measure time and money as the same level of currency. And so, when you know that time is actually producing an outcome the same as currency is, then you look at it differently. You act differently.
I love that. I took a note down. I think that's powerful. I want to switch gears a little bit while we have just a couple of minutes, because we got so much great like sales mindset nuggets there. I want to laser focus into something you mentioned around, having the opportunity to take a 6-figure position in someone else's company and ultimately making the decision to start your own brand. Will you talk us through that process and how that was? Because I know a lot of folks get these shiny objects or, comfort little offers that are like that carrot in front of them. And I'd love to know how you navigated that decision for yourself.
And I'll take you, it's a story, but I was in a situation where I was given the opportunity to go for an interview for a 54-year-old debt-free family company in Schaumburg, Illinois, just outside of Chicago.
I'm from southern Wisconsin. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so yes, exactly. So this opportunity came. They were looking for a national executive sales director. I had a 7-hour interview. I mean, just that in itself was taxing. And they flew me in to Chicago for the interview. And it was in the limousine on the way back to the airport. It was a Tuesday afternoon. It was in September. And I walked away from a $250,000 plus salary with commissions on top. I mean, $250,000. And the reason I said no to that is it didn't feel good. It just didn't feel right. I felt like somebody owed me, or, like they were just owning me and what I was expected for that dollar amount. It just felt gross to me. And it was just really clear. I was going through Chicago O'Hare. I pitched the proposal in the trash. In less than 24 hours, I vetted out my business plan. And I said, you know what? That's going to work for one company. Just imagine if I worked for hundreds of companies. And so that's where I put myself out in the spectrum. And that's when I became a professional coach. I like to say a chief inspirational officer because I inspire performance. But, I haven't looked back. That was 10 years ago. And I have been generating revenue and I'm filling a client roster ever since then.
Yeah, I think that is a huge lesson for all of us to take when you have these opportunities, whether it's a job or a relationship or even like a client that just doesn't feel right. Think about what your energy could be doing elsewhere, right? Like Marlo saying like, yeah, I could give them $250,000 of my energy, but like if I took all of that time currency into something different and work smarter and not harder, what's possible for me, for other people.
Oh, look at me now. I have a 4-day work week. I run my own brand. I have a team of people. I chart my own path and, it really, it lights me up. And here's the lesson I always like to say too, and this is a mantra that I hope you can adopt is, say no and 3 more will show. So if you're in that sales position and, a no really isn't necessarily a bad thing. And especially, like I said, if it's not in alignment with how you feel and your gut's going to tell you, and there's 4 key words when you're going up and making that decision. Is it light, heavy, expansive, or contracted? And if you literally write those 4 words down and you are facing yourself with that decision, whether it's a client, maybe it's a speaking engagement, whether it's a proposal you are asked to submit, does it feel light and expansive? Or is there something about that feels heavy and like contracted? Right there is, that is the fastest way for you to do a gut check to say, you know what? I'm going to just trust myself. And this is one I need to say no to. And the minute that you say no, I will almost guarantee you that 3 more perfect ideal clients will show up in that space because you were a good steward to yourself. You listened to who
Yeah.
you are, trusted your values and your morals. And that's where the business really, really does take off. So, you're hearing a little bit of mindset, a lot of strategy, constant positive self-talk, and you can hear these things just naturally coming out of me because I've trained myself this way, right? It's just my natural tendency, because that's how I can help other people, is when it's so natural for me. I can be a baton, I can pass it to somebody else, they can pick it up and run just as fast.
Yeah. Yeah. You're walking the walk, talking the talk. I definitely appreciate that. And as we wrap up here, I just have a couple of other quick questions for you, as you've given us lots of nuggets and insight. What is one thing that listeners can do today that will help them get closer to their dream life and dream business?
Absolutely. So I created a formula for mastering time and productivity, and I would love to share it with the audience. You can go to go.marlohiggins.com. And so, yes, I have a website, marlohiggins.com, but to get this time productivity strategy, you have to go to go. So go.marlohiggins.com. And that's one thing. It's called the 30-60-10 formula. And it stemmed from the question, Marlo, what should I be doing with my time? And, I put a lot of thought into that, and I dug deep, and that's where the 30-60-10 strategy comes from. And again, I'm just going to leave it at that. So you can go download your copy, and it's the number one time productivity strategy, because what it does, it matches clear actions to the percentage of time that you need to be spending those actions. And it's over 30% growth every single week, or it's every day, every week, to 40 hours in a month just focused on growth. If you're, you get what you focus on. If you're focused with, growth, a whole week out of the entire month, you're going to get growth.
Wow. And like you said, time is such a powerful currency that we all have, but we can't always get more of. So sounds like a really huge resource for folks at gomarlohiggins.com. Is there any other places you would like folks to go to learn more about you and what you do?
Absolutely. You can listen to our podcast, 22 Motivational Minutes with Marlo. You can join our Perform and Get Paid community Facebook group. That's where our Mavericks gather together and we engage and we connect. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you go to Your Chief Inspirational Officer on YouTube, a lot of the strategies that I coach on today, they're 2-3 minute snippets that are out there for people to watch. One of my favorites is the self-belief video. So if you go to Your Chief Inspirational Officer on YouTube, and in the search bar, type in self-belief, and the video is going to pop up. And all I'm going to do is tease you that if you have a potato and if you have a straw, you need to watch that video, because it's going to measure an actual physical, tangible action that you can measure your self-belief with.
Oh, so much goodness. Thank you for just dropping all of this. We'll make sure we have links in the show notes so you can stay connected with Marlo and your own potential. Sounds like she's ready to capitalize on it. So thank you so much, Marlo. I will be back next week, friends, with another inspiring guest that will help you make your dream life your real life.